With this take-home resource, we hope that you and your family are informed about Ebola. So you want to visit Central Africa with your family. It'll be nice to look at the views and check out the cool animals. But there's one more thing you should check out before you arrive. Ebola is currently trending on many social media sites. It's gone viral, both literally and figuratively. Now, Ebola is a virus. The virus is an infectious agent that can only replicate within a host organism. Think of a virus as a dormant volcano, only erupting in specific conditions, which in the case of a virus is a living thing. The Ebola virus is a contagious disease that causes severe bleeding, organ failure, and can lead to death. The pathogen which causes Ebola is the genus Ebolavirus, which belongs to the family Filoviridae. As seen in the above diagram, Ebola falls under the genus Ebolavirus, which is then part of a worm-like virus family named Filoviridae. Of the 5 known strains of Ebola, 4 can cause sickness in humans. According to the New England Journal of Medicine diagram above, the 4 strains which cause sickness in humans are the Zaire, Sudan, Bundibugyo, and Thai forest species. How does Ebola infect you? Well, the virus is not known to spread through the air, but it does spread through bodily fluids and direct contact with the infected. So where in the body does Ebola affect? As the virus spreads through the body, it damages organs and the immune system. Specifically, along with the immune system, Ebola attacks the spleen and kidneys, which produce blood clotting cells. These cells stop bleeding by forming a clot over injury. By killing blood clotting cells, the body can no longer prevent blood from leaking out and will bleed internally. In addition, Ebola causes the liver, lungs to shut down their functions, leading to multiple organ failure. So how does Ebola inflict all of this damage? Other viruses tend to not attack the immune system directly, giving time for dendritic cells, which are the brains of the immune system, to gather cells to combat the virus. However, by binding with the dendritic cell receptor, the Ebola virus turns it into a machine that makes more and more and more Ebola viruses.
Kiss me goodbye, write me while I'm gone. Goodbye, my sweetheart, America has heard the bugle call.
Okay, so now you know all about Ebola. You've flown to your designated African country. Great, but wait, you're now in Ebola territory. According to the above map, Ebola is most commonly found in Central and West Africa, specifically in these countries. The reason why basically all current Ebola cases are located in these countries is because the virus was originally found in these areas in 1976. Another reason why Ebola hasn't really spread to the rest of the world is because of its low infectivity. Ebola isn't an airborne virus, and to get it, you must physically touch infected matter, which is why if a case does pop up in a developed country, it's usually just a matter of quarantine. Currently, there are around a few thousand active cases of Ebola in the world, but don't be fooled by these low numbers. Ebola is so lethal that it kills people faster than it can infect. Ebola doesn't discriminate, and anyone can be infected. However, those most susceptible are people with already damaged immune systems. As Ebola attacks the immune system directly, those with a weakened immune system will be even more vulnerable, as there are less resources the body can use to fight back the Ebola virus. In addition, hospital workers and caretakers of the infected have an extremely high chance of contracting this disease as they are in frequent physical contact with the infected person. Ebola is spread through direct contact with blood or other bodily fluids such as vomit, diarrhea, urine, breast milk, and sweat. These fluids contain potentially billions of tiny individual Ebola viruses, and if you do happen to touch infected matter, then the virus will enter through broken skin and other entrances in your body. Therefore, the easiest way to avoid getting Ebola is to avoid touching foreign objects. You touched a foreign object, and now you're sick. Let's see if your symptoms match those of Ebola's. According to the CDC, the signs and symptoms of Ebola include fever, aches and pains, weakness and fatigue, sore throat, loss of appetite, stomach pain, and unexplained bruising. Unfortunately, you have all of these symptoms. The immune system is a complex network whose function is to defend the body against infection. Within the immune system, there are 3 lines of defense which defend against foreign substances. The first line of defense is made up of chemical barriers in skin, and this is important: intact and not broken skin. Intact skin provides an unbroken physical barrier to the entry of pathogens. Ebola penetrates this physical barrier by entering through broken skin and wounds. Because the skin is not intact, there are gaps in the skin that allow foreign substances to secretly enter. If Ebola evades the first line of defense, the second line of defense kicks in. By seeking and destroying, the immune system tries to combat the virus by clotting blood and heating up the body through fever and inflammation. However, before this defense kicks in, Ebola destroys the lungs and kidneys, causing the production of blood clotting cells to cease. These actions of the second line of defense directly match the symptoms felt by the patient, as they will have a temperature from the fever and bruises from the body's inability to clot blood. If Ebola evades the second line of defense, then the third line of defense activates by initiating 2 specific immune responses, which is a more targeted response to the disease. The first attack involves B cells, which produce special molecules called antibodies. Specific antibodies bind to the antigen of Ebola and basically holds it still for T cells, which are the killing cells, to kill the Ebola cell. Think of antibodies as handcuffs and T cells as the executioner. If you survive, then your body releases memory cells, which memorize the exact shape and weaknesses of Ebola. Your body stores these away until the disease enters the body again, in which case the immune system immediately recognizes it and kills it before the virus does damage for a second time. After you realize you have Ebola, you start to search for cures. Here's a list. That's right, there are no cures. The only treatment is this. This helps to prevent Ebola from getting entry into cells. This could theoretically increase the likelihood of you surviving and your quality of life, as with less cell entry, Ebola can't turn cells into machines that make even more Ebola viruses, meaning that there will be less virus for the immune system to fight. Good news, after taking this drug, you're finally recovering, but you still need to rest. Why not use this time to learn about key Ebola milestones? In 1986, 10 years after Ebola was discovered, scientists made a major breakthrough in the classification of the virus. They discovered that instead of Ebola looking like a normal spherical virus, it instead looked like a worm. Using this knowledge, researchers were able to check descriptions of other viruses in the genus Ebola is part of, and were able to start working on the treatment you just took. Afterwards, they published their findings on The Lancet, titled This article is considered to be a key scientific paper on Ebola, and by using these findings, researchers were able to develop a new vaccine of the Zaire strain of Ebola. So there you have it, a complete guide to surviving Ebola.